Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Kylie Stam. I'm the Diversity Program Manager for the Elliott School of International Affairs. And welcome to day 2 of our Inclusive Excellence Week. You're joining us today for Proposals for a More Inclusive Elliott Policy Memo Competition. I'm really excited for you to hear from each of our students today. And before we begin, we just want to share that alongside our community members at the AT&T Center for Indigenous Politics and Policy, the PW resides on the traditional and ancestral homelands of the Piscataway and Anacostan peoples who have served as stewards of the region for generations. While we're not together on campus yet, we do gather as part of the GW community. So we thank each of you for being with us. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Roly Law, our faculty co-chair on the Council of Diversity and Inclusion.
Great. Thank you so much, Kylie. I thank everybody for joining us today because I really think this is a wonderful event to honor and highlight the great work done by our students at the Elliott School. So to explain a little bit about what this was, this year, the Council on Diversity and Inclusion hosted a policy memo competition for both undergraduate and graduate students. And what we did was we asked students to identify areas for improvement in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion in international affairs at Elliott. And the purpose ultimately was to provide feedback on aspects of Elliott School programs or areas that could use some more diversity. And these memos proposed a great diversity of things, which was fantastic, including new scholarship and studies and ways of just supporting students and their life on campus. So the memo could provide a wide variety of feedback to the Elliott School. And what they were exactly asked to do was write a one-page policy memo, which is extremely difficult, as you can imagine. You're trying to write something very important, but it's got to be in one page. And it had to include the problem, a background and analysis, policy options, and recommendations. And in terms of judging and ranking, the originality and relevance were very key to their ranking. And when they were judged, just so you all know, in terms of diversity and inclusion, all of the memos were first anonymized. So we didn't, none of the judges knew the names, gender, race, ethnicity, or anything about the writer, the author of the memos. And so these were actually really chosen blindly based on their, values. So, these 4 students who are here in front of you today are all finalists, and the 2 first prize winners are awarded $250 each. And all 4, of course, are being highlighted today. In addition to that, all of the participants who sent us a memo, we are incorporating those recommendations so that they will be reflected and discussed by the Elliott School as a whole. So first, I'd like to just introduce who the students are, and then we'll go into their presentations about what were these brilliant ideas. So Ryan Mackler is a senior in international affairs and economics with a minor in Arabic studies. Tyler Burrell is a first-year master's student in security studies. Anthony Hu is a junior international politics major. And Nakisa Azizikotenaei is in the MIPP program at the Elliott School. So what I'd like to do is start by handing over the floor to Ryan Mackler, who did win a first prize for his memo. Ryan, please, can you tell us what it was all about?
Absolutely, Dr. Wall. Good morning to everyone. Thanks for joining us at this early hour. So my memo took a look at the Elliott School's undergraduate curriculum. And in looking for a topic, I decided to search through each of the different concentrations and just take a look at general course offerings. I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to find, but I just wanted to see what, the list of courses that were theoretically offered to students. as a double econ major, I was naturally drawn to the international economics concentration. While it's not my chosen concentration, I'm very familiar with it. There's a lot of overlap between the economics double major and the international economics curriculum. And just for a bit of background for our viewers, the international economics concentration requires the completion of both Econ 2181, which is a course on international trade theory and policy, and Econ 2182, a course on international macroeconomic theory and policy, as well as 5 other courses of students choosing. According to the Elliott School Bulletin, there are over 75 other courses that could theoretically count towards this concentration. And again, they are left up to the discretion of the student. 75 courses seems like a huge list, and there's a wide variety of options spanning multiple disciplines. It's not just the economics curriculum that students can draw from. They can draw from courses related to econ, but that may have more of a geography or a public health focus. There are international affairs course offerings that will count as well. But I noticed that a number of courses were not offered this year, and in fact had not been offered in many years. And those courses specifically have focused around regional economics courses. So for example, there's a Econ 2198 designation that's known as special regional topics in the economics department. And while I, coming in freshman year, had taken a course with this designation on, I believe it was the economics of East Asia. Other courses that theoretically could be offered in this designation, including, according to the bulletin, the economics of Africa, the economics of the EU, had not been offered, at least since my time at GW, which at this point has been 4 years, eight semesters. And I found that particularly striking because I have friends who would absolutely be interested in those courses. They have regional, I think a lot of students at GW try and gain a regional focus despite their regardless of what their concentration actually is. And more importantly, I think, teaching courses on different regions offers an opportunity to bring in faculty from those regions. And I know in discussions with my peers, a lot of the focus from students is having professors speak directly on regions that they're from, regardless of the topic, whether that's economics, anthropology, any of the myriad of intersection of topics that the international affairs major covers. And I know, along with the listed, the courses listed on the bulletin, there were actually that had not been offered, including Africa and the EU. There were no approved courses that covered the Middle East or South Asia. And the lack of these courses, in my opinion, I think hampers the ability of international economic students to really understand the unique economic challenges facing the region, and how general economic models may or may not apply differently in these regions. And there's a number of scholars who have really taken approaches to talk about exactly what makes each of these different regions unique, and why some of the general economic theories that students come into the Elliott School seeing in Econ 101 or Econ 102 are, should be modified or have that little asterisk on. I think in general the economics field to an outside perspective may seem a little bland and not ripe for diversity and inclusion focus. Quantitative data, to some people, it's just quantitative data, but I think it's important to understand that, especially when we're talking about international economics, that there is a need to see these regional differences. And so my proposals were relatively straightforward. The first option was to work with the economics department at GW to ensure that at the very least we had those Econ 2198 regional course options, at least on a 2-year basis, so that or at a rotating 2-year basis. So by the end of a student's 4-year undergraduate term, they could have the chance to have taken those courses at least once. At the same time, I'm very aware that the economics department is outside the purview of the Elliott School, and they are certainly working on their own areas in terms of diversity and inclusion from a faculty perspective. And The second option is actually able to be housed within the Elliott School. There's a course designation, the IAFF 3184, which is a special topics in international economics course heading. This is ready-made. The registrar can approve courses under this designation, for any semester. And it would, by housing the course under the Elliott School, it would allow the Elliott School to have choice in faculty hiring. And the Elliott School could target practitioners working at institutions that it knows well, including the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, or the State Department's Bureau of Economic Business Affairs, or the Commerce Department's Commercial Foreign Service, or various other government entities that could specifically teach on regions that are not under the Econ 2198 designation, or that intersect the two, and anything that's not already under a current course designation. The 3184 designation would allow to be housed. It is a special topics designation, so there's some flexibility there. It's a narrowly tailored memo, but I think the importance is it's an area that we can make concrete improvements on at any point. As soon as we have that conversation on who is the appropriate faculty to teach the course, and is there student interest, or how can we generate student interest if the students are unaware that these are actually options that they can take. So it was fun. It was interesting to write. The research was interesting to see, and I appreciate the ability to share it with you all today.
Great. Thank you, Ryan. I just wanted to emphasize, that Ryan's memo really did highlight the need for these regional courses, such as economics of Africa and other regional economics in the international economics curriculum, that I think a lot of students would find very interesting and important, as Ryan said. So I think myself and the rest of the judges found that very interesting, especially the way that he did an analysis of what existed and when it's offered. And that was very helpful, the actual research you did on that, Ryan. Thank you. And so with that, actually, first, I'm going to move on to Tyler Burrell, who has a memo on the lack of studies in disabilities. And so Tyler, I would like to just move on and give the floor to you. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Tyler Burrell. I am a master's student in the Security Policy Studies program here at the Elliott School. And I initially want to start by just thanking you all for joining us bright and early this morning. So as introduced, I wrote my policy memo on the lack of disability diversity in the Elliott School curriculum as a whole. So I think the Elliott School does a really commendable job of integrating certain aspects of diversity in its curriculum. I think a really good example of this is gender. I know as a graduate student, there are gender policy studies concentration courses. There's a really broad variety of gender-related courses that you can take that apply to all kinds of specialties within international affairs. But the lack of studies on disability and international affairs is pretty disheartening within the Elliott School curriculum. So according to the World Health Organization, about 1 billion people, or 15% of the world's population, experience some form of disability. And so a lot of people. And because of this, the disability community is often referred to as the largest minority in the world. Disability doesn't discriminate, and thus we see direct intersections with gender, race, socioeconomic status, kind of all manners of identity. There's a lot of overlap. And so this complex intersectional nature of disability causes it to have a really significant impact on international affairs, including, but not limited to, the studies of development, humanitarian aid, food security, public health, economics, security, war, conflict resolution. And so the Elliott School really has a responsibility to teach its students how disability diversifies and intersects with these critical policy areas to fully educate and prepare their students for effective careers in IA. When so many GW students go on to become policymakers and bigwigs in the IA community, and they're going to be impacting lots of people's lives, it's really, really critical to ensure that that foundation, that baseline study is inclusive and diverse so that students are prepared in their careers moving forward to handle whatever situations and circumstances are thrown their way. So currently, the Elliott School lacks any sort of official policies regarding disability in coursework. They absolutely ensure accessibility for disabled students who are in the program, but they don't account for the intersectional inclusion of disability within IA. And so the inclusion of disability studies in the program, basically the point of my memo was that it should be a priority because in the end, true diversity cannot exist without disability. So I listed 3 policy options that the Elliott School could pursue moving forward. The first is to invite more disabled and disability specialists, professors, and guest speakers to the Elliott School in order to bolster diversity. So these professionals' perspectives are really vital to enhancing the program, really filling it out and making it fully comprehensive. And they will also be able to shape and help guide how the Elliott School includes disability in its curriculum. My second policy option was to integrate disability modules into pre-existing courses. So I'm sure as my fellow students know, in various courses each week, we go through different modules and we cover a variety of topics within kind of whatever the course is covering. And so general and specialized courses alike, in my opinion, should include modules on disability in international affairs, just like we have a gender week through the semester, et cetera. And then my third policy option that I recommended was to create specialized courses focused on the extensive impacts of disability on IA. So similar to the courses dedicated to gender within the Elliott School, the Elliott School should form courses dedicated to educating students about the intersections of disability within various IA sectors. So like I mentioned earlier, disability covers such a huge range of specialties within IA that there's definitely plenty of material to work with in terms of creating specialized courses. And so in the end, my recommendation was for the Elliott School to pursue an adoption of policy options 1 and 2, which are inviting those who are disabled or specialized in disability in IA to the Elliott School and integrating disability modules into pre-existing courses. Because while I believe that the development of specialized courses on disability in IA should be definitely pursued in the long term, I think integrating modules into pre-existing courses is a cost-effective first step. And I hope to see more disability studies in the Elliott School's curriculum moving forward. So thank you for having me here today.
Thank you, Tyler. That was a really great overview. And again, I'd like to highlight that. So Tyler's memo also won the first prize for the memo competition in the graduate arena. And one of the things that really struck us is that it was so original in the sense that many people on the judges panel even said, wow, haven't thought of that before. And yet it's so important. And so it really drew attention to an important arena of diversity that was not being given attention. And I just have a quick question for you, Tyler, which is that when you mentioned the idea of putting in, let's say, a module or something like that, or touching upon it, and of course, just to make it more concrete to people who are listening, what kind of topics would you consider? Just give a couple examples of what are a couple topics that would be the intersection of disabilities and international affairs?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it is definitely dependent on the course. So if it is a generalized course, then they can touch on kind of a lot more issues. If it's more specialized, like if it's a security course or a development course, then those things definitely become more honed in and focused. I definitely think so as a security, as someone who's in security, I have found it really interesting that as a disabled woman myself, I've experienced a lot of instances in which security has been particularly lax for me. So I am able to access areas more easily and without thorough security checks, like going through security checkpoints, for example. And so as someone who does a lot of research into women in terrorism and how they use societal and cultural norms to take advantage of security, that is really interesting to me, and how I've definitely seen that overlap into my experience as a disabled woman. I think disability becomes especially important when you start talking about development and humanitarian aid. When part of the population in which you are trying to help is disabled, that completely changes so many factors in terms of planning, in terms of following through in construction and development. The kind of aid that needs to be provided can change depending on the types of disabilities that are present. So I think those are just a few examples of just the huge world that can be impacted within IA by disability. And so I think not all of those overlaps are super complicated. I just think that, like you said, disability is often something people don't think about unless it impacts them. It's often brushed aside and kind of shoved under the rug. So I think it's really important to, even if these intersections are maybe not the most novel ideas, I think it's really important to include them in the curriculum and touch on them to educate students so that it is something that they are aware of and can plan into their careers moving forward.
Great. Thank you so much. And so now I'd like to turn to Anthony Hu is our undergraduate finalist, and he wrote a panel on summer undergraduate programs for underrepresented minorities, and I'd like to turn the floor over to Anthony.
Hi, thank you and good morning. Before going into details about my proposal, I wanted to share one key statistic that got me thinking about this memo and kind of sparked my ideas about this memo. And it's a 2016 study by the US Department of Education that talks about how underrepresented minority groups and populations are growing in population in colleges and universities through the US, but the degree attainment gap between white populations and Black and Latino populations have more than doubled. And so I thought that was particularly concerning because it showed to me that although colleges and universities are attracting these diverse populations, I feel like more support is needed at stages throughout their academic career to help them succeed. And so to help fulfill that gap and help support these students at these stages, I think a summer undergraduate research opportunity would help provide that support. And that can look like a variety of programs. So for me, one instance or one example would be like a 1-month summer undergraduate research opportunity where speakers, there can be guest speakers and faculty members who lecture on a variety of topics in international affairs. And students can be paired with faculty mentors who can help them fulfill a full-fledged research paper and write a full-fledged research paper, an independent research that would help them further their interests, and perhaps that the papers can be embedded with their own perspectives and unique insights and perspectives and stuff like that. And finally, I think that this program can look like a workshop at the end of that whole program where students can present their research and gain visibility for their ideas, and that would help them fulfill and further their career prospects. And for underrepresented minorities, I think that can also look like a variety of things. And so it could be perhaps first-generation students, or it can be Pell eligible students, and can be a variety of groups that I think would all benefit from a program like this. And so the benefits for this program, I think, are twofold. So first, at the undergraduate level, I think studies have shown that students who participate in research opportunities are more likely to stay in colleges, and it would help increase their undergraduate satisfaction within those colleges. And secondly, I think it would open up career prospects that they may not have known about or had been exposed to before. And so this program would help them do that and expose them to paths to graduate school that they may not have known about, and that this program would support them. And finally, at the graduate level, I think it would, for students that participate in the program, it would be a highly impressionable summer opportunity for them, and it might motivate them to apply to the Elliott School for Graduate Studies, or it would attract more diverse applications among graduate applications. And lastly, I wanted to point out that it would be the first of over 15 GW funded research opportunities that focuses just on minority groups and people within these underrepresented minority populations.
Great. Thank you so much, Anthony. Just quickly, I wanted to ask you if you could just explain a little bit about how you see it constructed, in the sense of, is that faculty? What's the role of maybe existing students, or how is this being run, if you get what I mean?
So one way that I imagined it, and I think it could take place in a variety of ways and structures, but one way that I imagined it is like a 1-month research program where students come to DC and they're paired with a faculty mentor who can help them explore their interests, who might be in that field that they've indicated on their application to said program. And at the same time, while they're working on these research papers throughout that 1 month, these faculty mentors and guest speakers can come in and lecture on topics related on broad topics and international affairs that would help them expand their knowledge about international affairs and perhaps the interests that they may be working on.
Great, thank you so much, Anthony. That's excellent, and I would like to now move the floor over to Nakisa Azizikotenaei, who was a finalist for the graduate memo competition. And her memo was focused on a summer intensive to integrate foreign students into our system better. Go ahead, Nakisa.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. It's a great pleasure to be kind of after all these brilliant ideas. So I hope I don't disappoint. My proposal is offering a strategy to Elliott School to kind of like how we can integrate international students to our system better. Because one main challenge that these students have to go through is just coming to US, like they have to leave behind their family, friends, everything that they knew, and coming to a new country that they have to find housing in a new system, finding jobs to cover their expenses. And on top of all of that, they have to go to classes and participate not only in a different language, but in a different, completely different system of education. So that can bring a lot of insecurity and self-doubt to this student. Some of these students that can be a student in back home country, they might like not do as great as they were intended to. So that can carry over when they are in the job market and kind of decrease the rate of employment for Elliott School as well. To mitigate this or resolve this issue, my policy is suggesting that each program at Elliott School should be obligated to create a summer intensive course that teaches the students some of the main standards of studying in the US. Also inform them about what the GW community has to offer before they even arrive to the country. Each week, one peer can volunteer to teach a student about reading critically, writing in academic arena, and address 10 essential points about education for a student to know before starting at Elliott School. I suggest that by the end of the course, we can invite a staff or faculty that talk about different services that GW has as a benefit. For example, we have Writing Center or International Student Association or International Service Offices. And also Elliott School itself has many benefits that we can kind of highlight at the end of the program. For example, we have a high rate of employment that can encourage a student who didn't even choose yet to come to GW to be encouraged to have that choice. Like many other policies, this policy has the challenges as well. One main one that I noticed is like, how do we encourage these peer leaders to volunteer and participate because it's summer. And as a student, I think like at the summer, you want to either cool off or you have a lot of material that you want to catch up with. So you might not have enough time to overwhelm yourself with teaching a class at this prestigious school. One way to incentivize this student, I think, is to offer them a certification by the end of the course or a recommendation letter. So a recommendation letter that comes from the school can kind of give them the upper hand to go to a job market, to show the employee that not only that I volunteer for things that I'm not I'm not asked for, and I'm a good team player, but it can show them that these students are trustworthy enough that a prestigious school like Elliott School led them to lead a class. So with that, I think the newcomers get that boost of confidence. The students who are going out of the door in this economy can find a job that they desire. And also Elliott School, I'm hoping that they would improve the rate of employment and become a more inclusive school as a result. With that, I would end my talk and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you so much, Nakisa. Again, I wanted to mention some highlights that I found. I really liked in this proposal, number one, taking care of our international students, of which are a very important community, and also the incorporation of peer mentoring, of building those relationships between American Elliott School students and the foreign students who are coming, and possibly building friendships and connections as well while doing so, while providing this really critical need. So I think that's it's a lot of value in there. And so thank you so much for that. And with that, I would like to now open up the floor for questions. And I'll ask Kylie if she has some questions already showing up there. Otherwise, I have some questions.
So no questions have come in yet. And just for attendees, you can hover at the bottom of your screen and there's a Q&A button and you can submit a question that way. We don't have the chat enabled. So submit any questions you'd like through the Q&A feature and we'll get to them.
Okay.
I'll turn it to you for now, Burley.
Okay, great. All right, because I always have questions for wonderful topics like this. So I want to turn back to Ryan. I'm going to come back to economics here for a minute and say, Ryan, could you give us a little bit more detail in, so you mentioned how certain classes don't get offered, let's say like regional economics classes, maybe for 4 years. You counted the semesters, which was very impressive. And what I wanted to know was, how do we find out what the demand for these courses would be? How can we, I'm assuming that there really is demand for these courses. Now, how do we connect that demand, if you get what I mean, to the department, so that we make sure that people say, okay, we have the students, where's the class?
Without a doubt. And it's, I am aware of the challenge to the university and to the Elliott School, and sort of gauging that feedback. I think the first solution is to take stock of what those classes are. I'm not I don't know who's aware of what courses haven't been offered in a long time, even if they have been listed on that bulletin, and maybe get into an institutional practice of, if a course hasn't been offered for X number of years, maybe it's 3, just putting out a survey and saying, are there students who are interested in those classes? I think from an economics perspective specifically, especially on the regional courses, it's reminding students that these aren't necessarily going to be your, I have the word typical comes to mind, but typical econ course, that's incredibly theory focused and incredibly, because I think for, at least from the Elliott School's perspective, that, that may be a negative for some students who aren't necessarily international econ concentration students. The course that I took back in my freshman year, Economies of East Asia, absolutely relied on econ theory, but it was also, again, an analysis of what markets and what made these certain what were the strengths and weaknesses of some of these countries' national industrial plans, an analysis of how they acted and how their leaders acted during major financial events, including the Asian economic crisis back in the 90s, and of course we had the recession back in 08. Because each country responded in different ways, and that to some extent is almost more of a policy conversation, and maybe more welcoming, or maybe more inviting to students who shy away from traditionally shy away from econ courses.
Great, thank you. Now we have one question has popped up here in the Q&A. It says, and this is for everyone, so anyone can raise their hand for this. What are the main challenges for integrating diversity into the Elliott School curriculum and the main benefits? So what are the main challenges you think and the main benefits? Any of you would like to answer that? More than one of you can answer it if you'd like.
I'll go ahead and take a stab at it. I think that a challenge towards kind of diversifying the Elliott School's curriculum is that diversity is so diverse. There's such a range of, I learn something new every day from various students in different classes, things that I never would have considered before being kind of introduced to. So I think kind of an aspect of integrating true diversity into the Elliott School's curriculum is that it requires a lot of knowledgeable experts. It requires planning to fit into modules and class periods. So I think there's a lot of kind of forethought and dedication and effort, and kind of you also want to do justice to those topics and those ideas. So really definitely a lot of research is going into it. So I think that's definitely a challenge to creating a fully diverse program, but I think that the benefits are pretty much endless, because it results in a more comprehensive education. It's a full it fully prepares students for the real world and their careers, and whatever situation or circumstance they might find themselves in. And in addition to that, makes students feel more welcome and at home within the program. By having a diverse program that covers issues like race and gender and religion and disability or ability, definitely speaks to the students within the program that they are valued and important and seen within the international affairs community. So definitely, I think the benefits are certainly worth the challenges that come along with integrating diversity.
Great, thank you. We do have a few more questions actually popping up right now. So first, let's hit those, and then we'll come back and see who else has comments. So Professor Sourabaksh, She says the proposals range from how to incorporate more diversity in our curriculum and also how to better serve our diverse population of students. Thank you for providing such a great range. My question is for both Anthony and Nakisa. It seems like international students, both undergrad and grad, could benefit from some skill building prior to starting their studies. Both your proposals appeared complementary. I agree. I wonder if there would be space to explore your proposals in tandem. Either Anthony or Nakisa, would you like to respond to that?
I can go if that's okay. So I feel like one of the reasons that I thought about it, it was because of the class I took with Dr. Survash, because then I saw like how much you can offer in a virtual class that you didn't have that opportunity before, or at least I wasn't in that kind of environment. To know how much you can do in a virtual class, how much material that you can kind of provide for a student. So I think that's a great opportunity that the student don't have to travel to America to learn about America and the educational system. And you can extend these classes as much as you want. And then you can make it like thematically so a student can pick and choose which classes or what session they want to join. And so for sure that can be an option. I would be so open to that.
Great, thank you. Anthony, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I just want to say I agree with everything that Nakisa said, and that because one way to look at a summer undergraduate program would be to have students be able to pick between topics and lectures that they're interested in, and perhaps many of these lectures and topics can be directed toward international students or for students interested in these international experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, I definitely thought that both of these memos had a great overlap looking at skills trainings. And now I'd like to move to the next question from Professor Joe Spear. How will students and professors from non-diverse backgrounds benefit from your ideas? And anyone would like to take that?
I think I can start off with that. I think for my proposal, at least, I think it shouldn't be limited to just these students, and that all students should be able to apply. I know that among GW's funded research opportunities, many of them are self-directed and self-initiated between students and professors. But if there's a program in which students can apply to and are directly paired with professors and other students, I think any student can benefit from that, let alone these minority groups.
Thanks, Anthony. Anyone else?
I do also want to quickly point out that I think it's almost more critical for people who do not come from diverse backgrounds to be educated in a diverse way, because it exposes you to various worldviews that you would never otherwise consider. So I think that it's definitely not something that is limited to the benefit of diverse students and faculty. I think that the benefits are kind of endless for everyone involved, including those that may not have as diverse of a background.
Thanks. Anyone else want to jump in on this one? Nakisa?
Yeah, one thing that I noticed that, like, for example, in my experience and colleagues and friends that I had that they were international students, if you get a score of TOEFL over 100, you don't have to take EAP, which means that you don't learn how to write and read and think analytically. So I think that kind of these classes or these courses that, at least in my proposal, can just kind of train the student before they join a very serious class and kind of take the pressure out of the professor, so they don't have to kind of navigate these students through everything that they know.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I'd like to just add in for a second here on this as well. I definitely think that if you have underrepresented minorities and foreign students and so forth, all more brought up to speed and feeling comfortable in the classroom and on campus, as Nakisa is just alluding to, it definitely alleviates some pressure from the professor, but also it helps the overall community feeling and the ability for the classroom to be more productive and the classroom discussion to be brought to a higher level. And that's something that we all would benefit from at the university. So definitely I can see that that would be very beneficial to everybody, not just the students that are receiving some type of special training or special summer programs or so forth. And also, as Tyler mentioned, the idea that everyone can understand these issues better. So I think those are all wonderful, wonderful points. Are there any last comments from the panelists? I know we barely have about 2 minutes left, so I'll take any last comments that anyone feels that haven't been covered yet. I'm looking very complete. Okay, well, thank you very much. Then I just want to say thank you to everybody on the panel and for the attendees for coming to listen and support. I really just can't say enough how wonderful it was that all the Memo competition entrants, and including the winners, of course, but how wonderful it was that everyone took their time to make the effort and think about our program and ways that we can all build a better future together. So I just really appreciate that. And with that, I say have a wonderful day. Thank you very much.